quickly introduce myself. Troy Jessup, if you don't know who I am, I'm responsible in the UETN organization for anything that is network or security related issues.
Okay. Nice to have you with us today and hope you can join us more often, I guess.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Anyone else visiting today or new to our meeting? All right. I didn't see the minutes posted. So it does say we want to approve them. I didn't see them posted here. I guess we could go back to the.
Shelley, I sent them out separately when I
Okay.
sent out the link for I couldn't get them added.
Okay.
Laura, when she created it, she locked me out. So I sent them as a separate attachment.
All right. Did anyone not get to see them besides me? I didn't see that, I guess. All right. Does anyone have any suggested changes?
I thought they looked good.
Looked good to me.
So do we do an official vote for approval?
Sure, Clint Stevens, I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you. It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
What's your name?
And Benson.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, any opposed? Stay silent. Sounds good. Okay. It's going to be a quick agenda, I think, today, because I don't know how many of the subcommittees have updates, but we'll move into the discussion items today. And it looks like Ray is going to give us an update on the legislature activities. So Ray, we'll turn it over to you.
All right. Hey, thank you. Many of you have already seen the update, but for those of you that haven't, want to just share with you where we are with the results of the just completed legislative session. Yesterday we had the UTN Advisory Council meeting, and we reviewed legislation dealing specifically with telehealth. So I won't get into that here. I'll just talk about the handful of education related bills that we were tracking. Let me share my screen with you. Do you see my presentation there?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, all right. The first bill that I was tracking was House Bill 38. These are all bills that have passed. This is the school technology amendments, and it very specifically names UETN, and it has to do with any digital resources that we provide to any of the public schools. And it says that we're required to make sure that we block obscene or pornographic materials. There's some real concern out there to protect our students and make sure that they are protected. But this bill doesn't require us to change any of our practice. We already block those types of materials. We work with school districts in providing some kind of filtering tool that they're able to use. The sponsor of the bill really was almost apologetic to me. He said it makes it look like they're picking on UETN, that we're not doing our job, and that couldn't be any further from the truth. He said he's pleased with what we're doing. What he wanted this bill to be was a message bill that basically would tell software providers or those that provide those tools that we use to put them on notice that if their tools are to be used by anyone to access pornographic material, that those contracts would be canceled. And so that's really what it is. Again, it says a digital resource purchased or licensed by UETN and offered to students in public schools must have safety policies and technology protection measures that prohibit and prevent a public school student using the resource from sending, receiving, viewing, or downloading obscene or pornographic material. So the only additional requirement that gives to us is that we have to report to the Education Interim Committee before the session starts. So actually by the end of November, and we have to make an annual report of any incidences that we have followed up on to make sure that our students are protected. The second bill is House Bill 72. And this bill was sponsored by Representative Pulsifer. It requires that any tablet or smartphone sold in the state and manufactured it goes to the year 2022. So it gives those manufacturers time to be ready for that. But anyway, any tablet or smartphone when it's activated, has to be able to automatically enable a filter capable of blocking material that's harmful to minors. I don't know the technology of the tablets or smartphones, but a lot of the discussion centered around the fact that they claim that these tools already have those capabilities. They're just not turned on. And so as they're being sold in the future, again, beginning with year 2022, they when you turn them on, they have to automatically enable a filter. Any questions or comments on that one? The reason I included it is it doesn't just include private citizens. I mean, when we purchase laptops and smartphones and we're using them with our students, they need to have that capability as well.
Ray, I might add that I think there was a caveat or a clause in there that before it goes into effect, 5 other states have to also adopt a similar measure.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Rick, for that. I keep forgetting to mention that part. That wasn't included in the summary section I had.
And
But it
I
is
think,
in,
and I think also to that one, it certainly to the audience, to the industry that it was targeted at, it did get their attention. There's a couple of news articles that they were trying to get the governor to not approve that, because I think there probably are, well, I can guarantee you there are probably 5 other states out there who will do this. So
yeah.
Ray,
Well, this was the year of discussing about filtering and making sure that our students are safe, and that's just one more bill in that regard. And so we'll watch and see what the other states do, our surrounding neighbors.
Ray, may I ask a question?
Sure.
One of the issues that we've had here in Canyons, this is Scott, is parents asking to have their filter overlay on top of our filter, which is problematic. I'm just curious to think about that same issue if vendors are being forced to turn on a filter on their device. Does that have any impact on our ability to then be able to filter?
I'm going to defer that to Troy. Troy, what do you think on that?
Yeah, well, so Scott, it's a great point and a big concern. Double filtering just adds a huge layer of complexity in the process. So I would be concerned in this case, but I don't think that this would apply to devices that weren't in the BYOD type of model. We wouldn't be dealing with this on our Chromebooks and school distributed or such iPads and things like that. So I think that the overall impact for schools would be minimal to moderate, but bringing in those BYOD devices, yeah, that could cause all kinds of issues potentially. Now, you could come up with policy that just says that those devices are going to filter the way that they filter and such. But yeah, it would be a horrible idea, in my opinion, to double up on a filter. It creates too much complexity and such to being able to provide that service in a consistent and appropriate manner. Technologically, it just doesn't work.
Thank you.
Scott, have you made a decision yet on what you may be doing then?
We although parents ask to be able to do that, we really can't do it. And so we just have to do our best to educate and you know, do our best to make sure our filters are appropriate. But it is a challenge being internet police today. It's always sucked to be the internet police, but now it's
Yeah.
really craptacular. So
It's a good
Well-
word to describe it.
Yeah, well put. All right, thank you.
Best new
How-
term of the day.
House Bill 279. This was from Senator Lowry Snow was the sponsor of this. And this directs the establishment of an incarcerated youth program at Dixie State University. It provides online courses or interactive video conferencing capabilities for incarcerated youth to earn credit, perhaps high school graduation credit, or even college credit, that anything that would take them towards earning certificates, associate degrees, or bachelor's degrees. I think the best part of the bill, it includes funding for an academic advisor to work with these students and help them map out the courses that they need and help them with that. So I think that's a pretty good program, making sure that those students that are incarcerated have the ability to continue with their education and improve their standing. House Bill 348. The legislature set aside $115 million in this last session for what they called an infrastructure fund. And of that, described in House Bill 348, there's 40 million that's set aside to help with rural broadband, and there's 10 million that would go to GoEd for them to help manage that program and any of the additional costs that they have. So that's what this one is all about. It's, if I remember right, this is the bill that had like about 200 pages. So I never did print the whole thing off, but those two things are what that I felt like had most impact on our stakeholders, was the rural broadband monies that would be administered through GoEd, and then GoEd having the 10 million as well. Okay, the next one is Senate Bill 148, the third substitute, public education modifications from Keith Grover. This basically requires school districts and charter schools to allow parents to provide parents access to the curriculum that the local LEA uses. So that would have impact on the districts and those individual charter schools, that if a parent wants to have access to that content or that curriculum, that needs to be provided. It also has a requirement that for each grading period, a student receives a grade or a performance report for each course that they're enrolled in. That includes school district have that requirement, and charter schools also have that same requirement. Senate Bill 226, first substitute. This just gives the State Board of Education the authorization or the authority to certify online course providers. They can set the standards of what they need to do and what standards they need to meet in order to be an online course provider. And it allows the state board to make rules establishing those standards. And then it also allows the state board to set a fee to cover the cost of regulating the certified online course providers. So those were the ones that I felt like, had a direct impact on our stakeholders. Any other questions on those?
Ray, were they approved?
Yeah, these were all passed. They were all enrolled. They were all signed by the governor.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me go to the next part here. Can you see that? That's a chart with the funding that we received.
Yeah, we see that.
Oh, okay. in all of the various sessions that they held, they had multiple special sessions. We ended up losing a lot of funding, and we lost the 5.37 million plus. And so I was really concerned. And so our first priority, and the first priority set by the board, was that we asked that those funds that we lost be restored. And so that shows you the funding that we lost, but it was all restored. I mean, that doesn't show everything that was cut, but that was what was restored. And then I have let's see, wait a second, where's my arrow? There we go. It says up right there, it says anything that was later paid for through the CARES funding we didn't list on here. So we received additional funding beyond what you see that allowed us to complete some projects, improve the network and connectivity for many of our locations. So felt good about that. That was very helpful. The second priority was growth and operations. And that we didn't receive any of the new money that we typically would receive. That's the funding that goes to help pay for all of these new connections and these upgrades. You can see on average every year we have about 25 to 30 new locations that we are either upgrading significantly or they're brand new connections to the internet. And so we usually request that funding, and we've been very fortunate to be receiving that funding so that we don't have any problem connecting those schools. This year we don't have the funds to connect them. So that doesn't mean we're not going to connect them. What it means is that we'll have to dip into our emergency reserve fund to be able to cover those costs. There are one-time costs, which are about 600 and some odd thousand. Let's see, that was, 643,000 would be the one-time cost to connect those locations. And then the ongoing funding is to pay for the monthly circuit costs. Just like you have, if you sign up to the internet at home, you have to pay that monthly bill to keep that connection. Well, we have to do the same thing with all of the locations that we connect. We have a monthly bill that we have to pay. And so that makes it difficult when we don't have those ongoing funds to do that. It also makes it difficult that we don't have the one-time funds to connect the schools. So that will roll over to be our number one priority in this next session. We're hoping to tap into the American Rescue Act and try to see if we can't get it funded through there. I think I don't think the legislature deliberately didn't fund us. We were reassigned to a new committee, and they just were not familiar with who we are and what we do. And I don't believe they understood this second priority very well. So I'll be working with the legislature on that and seeing if we can't get that funding restored. And then that does bring me back to the ARPA. There's going to be a lot of funding coming into the state. It's $1.3+ billion coming in, and we've been asked to put together some list of things, and we are going to put this second priority on the list and ask that it be funded through this round of funding that comes through. They will be having a special session. The special session will be focused specifically on how these funds will be allocated, and they'll determine that in the special session. So that's my report, Rick, on what's happened with the legislature.
So Ray, what does ARPA stand for?
American Rescue Plan Act, is that right?
Is that's not tied to anything on the HERF funding, right?
It's the
Easiest way to explain it is it's
$1.9 trillion that was recently passed.
Okay.
that will be coming in. And of that 1.9 trillion, Utah will be receiving about 1.3 billion. That's a huge amount of money. And so we're looking to do projects that we didn't have enough time with the CARES Act to do long-term projects, but we've been told that this has a 4-year expiration date, not a 6-month expiration date.
All right, that's great. Thank you for your report.
Okay, thank you.
All right, up next we have a telehealth. Matt McCullough, you're going to talk to us a little bit about some stuff from the telehealth network meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Shelley. I actually have an update on a project that we did with CARES Act funding.
Great.
It was a school-based telehealth project, and it's going really well. So we wanted to just give a quick update. So a little background to this project. We did some research last year about school-based telehealth programs, school-based health centers, and the evidence shows that 93% of students who see the school nurse return back to the classroom. And we have a shortage of school nurses, as we know, in Utah. And so we wanted to find a way to help connect students to school nurses using technology. And so using CARES Act funding, we were able to purchase 175 telehealth kits. And as I talk, I'm thinking it might be helpful if I show you what they look like. Let me pull it up real quickly. And we placed these telehealth kits in 21 rural school districts. And it was a very collaborative effort. We worked through the regional service centers, and we had all the kits shipped to the regional service centers, who then worked with the district IT folks to get them added to the Wi-Fi and then distributed out to the schools. Let me show you real quickly. Can everybody see that page okay?
I delivered one out to Boulder Elementary in Garfield County.
Awesome. Yeah, it was a huge effort to distribute them and get them all out to the schools. So this is what the kit looks like. It comes with a tablet that has software built into it for doing a virtual visit securely. It's all encrypted. The technology used is very secure, so that as soon as a visit between a student and a nurse is complete, the nurse can download the information, like a summary of the visit, but then all the data is wiped off of the tablet and deleted. So we're not storing any health information. The other thing that comes in the kit is a number of diagnostic devices, a blood pressure cuff, an otoscope for taking images of the eardrum, a pulse oximeter, a stethoscope, and all these little diagnostic devices connect via Bluetooth to the tablet. So these kits were all distributed out mostly to Title I schools. Again, 175 schools in all these rural school districts. I won't go through and name them all. But that's kind of what the kit looks like. The workflow is pretty basic. It's set up so that a student can go down to the office, and secretary or some another staff member. We even have some librarians who have volunteered to help out. They'll help the student sit down in a secure room and put the tablet in front of them and start a video visit with the nurse who's at a remote location. Sometimes, in the Tintic School District, there's a remote school out in Wendover that's 200 miles from where the nurse usually is. And the nurse there has just said how much time it's going to save traveling and allow her to be able to do these virtual visits with students when she couldn't otherwise get out there. So they start the virtual visit, which then notifies the nurse, and she logs into a website where she can join the virtual meeting. And the technology is really neat. The nurse who's remote can actually control the diagnostic devices. So all the secretary has to do is, let me give you an example. This is the pulse oximeter, if you can see it. All the secretary has to do is put it on the student's finger, and the nurse 200 miles away can turn it on and view all the data that it's transmitting from the device to the tablet. The stethoscope is really cool as well. This is just a little digital stethoscope, and the nurse can tell the secretary or whoever else is there with the student where to put it, and then the nurse can hear the sounds of the heart or the lungs, um, 200 miles away through the website. So the technology is really neat, and we've obviously had to include a lot of people, all the school nurses, secretaries, and staff, and we've done a lot of training. We've done a live Q&A session, and now we're moving on to kind of the hands-on training. Every Monday and Friday, we're letting nurses call us and do a test call and test all the diagnostic equipment and make sure they're comfortable with it. They're pretty slammed right now responding to coronavirus, doing testing and immunizations and all kinds of other things. So they've been busy with that. But one of the interesting things that's come up is a lot of them have asked if there's a way to use the technology to connect a student to a licensed mental health provider. They said that there's a huge need for that. So we're having conversations right now with a few different organizations in the state about how we can leverage other resources and licensed mental health providers. And the technology is all set up to do that. We can route these calls to anyone. And so that's what we're working on, is to be able to get it set up so the student can just hit connect and it'll notify a mental health provider who can join and talk to the student. So that's kind of the overview of the project. All the kits have been distributed and training's been done, and they're starting to use it when they have time. So the back end of the system allows us to generate a lot of data and reports just on the number of connections. Again, we don't see any health information. It's all deleted. But hopefully in the next couple months, we'll have some really good reports on how many schools are using the devices and how many virtual visits are happening between students and nurses. So that's my update. Is there any questions?
This sounds like a great project, Matt. I had one question. Do the students or the parents have to opt in for their students to be able to use some of those services?
Great question, Shelley. So we don't have an opt-in because typically in school-based health centers where they have an opt-in policy, it's because they have to bill insurance.
Okay.
And we didn't, that complicates the whole project a lot. And so we actually structured it so that we're not billing insurance, we're not billing Medicaid. Right now, we're really just connecting the student to the school nurse. There's no requirement for billing or anything like that. So that made it more simple. So we didn't have to have a like a consent form and opt in like that.
Great. I just was thinking with the mental health thing that you would require something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And if we go down that road with utilizing providers from another organization, we probably will need to.
Awesome. Any other questions for Matt? All right. Thanks, Matt, for your presentation. That's great. Great
Okay,
work.
thanks.
Hope you guys can get more of those maybe into other schools.
Yeah, with this next round of funding that's coming, that's our goal, is to get more. The rural districts really want them. The school districts in urban areas have been mixed. But actually, one thing I was going to share is that Intermountain Healthcare is doing a similar project. They've also purchased telehealth kits that they are putting in some of the more urban districts. I think in Park City and I want to say Ogden. I'm not exactly sure, but I've been coordinating with Intermountain so that we're not overlapping and putting different technology in the same schools. But that's kind of where it's worked out, is that Intermountain is more focused on the underserved urban schools, and we're focusing more on the rural schools.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right. Next, we have an update. It looks by Jim Stewart. Jim, are you here today?
And I'm accompanied by Troy and Corey. And so I'm going to just say thank you for allowing us to do this. This is always enjoyable to be part of this conversation. And we're going to be talking about the filtering RFP that we're working on. But I think first we're going to, and I don't know what order you want us to do this, but Corey's going to be talking about Eduroam and about the statewide inventory that we're currently planning and will be working on with all of the districts. And this is for K-12 hardware and software that will be happening this fall. So Corey, if you want to start out on those two, that would be great.
Good deal. Thanks, Jim. And Shelley, I think how the agenda is listed is Eduroam's up first, and then filtering, and then the inventory. So I think we'll just proceed that way. Does that sound good to you?
That's great. Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Okay. Just in case that anybody had a question on that, just want to make sure we follow the agenda. So anyway, good morning. Thanks for having us here. Really appreciate sharing with the advisory committee. It's always fun to come and present and to talk with you all. I know that several of you that are on this committee have helped with the Eduroam project, been part of it, and hopefully you'll be able to share some of those stories as well with the group. So thank you. With that, I'm going to turn the time over to Jeff. He's going to take just a minute and talk about what Eduroam is and why it's important for those that may not know. So, Jeff.
Hey, thanks, Corey. So I'm Jeff Egley. If I haven't met you, I'm an associate director with UETN Technical Services, and I'm the program director for Eduroam and this effort that we're doing within UETN. So we've had an opportunity in the past to provide an update and our vision for Eduroam, but just to bring all those up to speed that are not familiar, Eduroam is a secure means for educators, administrators, students within education, higher ed and K-12, and also we're working with libraries to essentially roam within those locations that support and advertise Eduroam. It started within research and higher ed, and so locations such as the University of Utah, Utah State University have had Eduroam going for a number of years. We started in an effort focused on other ways to really improve access within education, reached out to Internet2, who is the provider within the United States for Eduroam. Eduroam is a global solution, and I'll discuss that in just a minute. And we, working with Jim Stewart, our CTO, we reached out to Internet2 to engage them in conducting a pilot, which has now really turned into a program, and that is to introduce Eduroam within K-12. And so working with your district, working with your charter, you get your credentials set up just like you do with your traditional email for Eduroam. Once you have that, you have then the ability to roam. If you're part of the Nebo School District and you go to UVU, you'll see you authenticate you're on. If you're out of state, even at the Smithsonian Institute Museum, you will authenticate it on. The Smithsonian participates. If you're down at Dixie State, or if you're in the Garfield School District, you will be on. And so it's a great opportunity for those within professional development, teachers that are visiting other locations, students that may have a debate at another district, or a team. They can get on and continue to do their study. So it's a secure means to roam within Utah and around the country, and actually around the globe. And Jim Stewart's one who has authenticated within higher education locations in Spain, within Ireland. I believe it starts to really resonate and connect when people start to move. Corey, I believe you'll probably hit on the SPs in that, or do you want me to kind of hit on some of the things that we're doing in that area?
We can definitely talk about that, but you're welcome to it, Jeff. So.
I will say, in the sense that we have another opportunity to work with those outside of education who are willing to provide access to their network and share their bandwidth to support EduRoam. And we look strategically at this. And so we started talking with libraries, but we also started working with others within the community. And so one of the first ones that came on to support EduRoam is UTA. And so it's on the front runner. And so excited that when those within education are on front runner, you'll see EduRoam, you authenticate, and you'll be on. We're also working with State of Utah Division of Technology Services. And so now EduRoam is available up at the State Capitol Complex. So as you're meeting up there with legislators, perhaps up there with the field trip, access to EduRoam is now up at the Capitol Complex. So we're excited about this program. We're excited about the progress we've made over the first number of years. We're definitely leading the way nationally, and we have, as Corey may reference, we have other states that are following our lead that are extremely interested in doing the same. So Corey, I'll defer to you.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for the explanation and describing why it's important. Very, very much appreciated. So the next item we wanted to talk about a little bit is the UEN vision. Yes.
Maybe just, I thought it was interesting that maybe, Jeff, or you can elaborate a little bit, working with some of the local city governments and that to get it in parks.
We're going to be, absolutely. Yeah, we're going to cover that really quick, Rick. In fact, we've asked Scott to talk about a little bit about his vision in canyons, Rick, and we'll definitely cover that. And real quick, just to follow up on the UEN vision for EduRoam, Jeff hit that pretty hard. The last couple of years, we've really focused on the educational institutions. But the second part of our vision is really, we want to stand this up anywhere where people are congregating, where students and teachers are, meeting, city parks, community centers, libraries, other vendor type related organizations. And really, that's the focus that we're doing this next year. We spent the last 2 or so years focusing on educational institutions, bringing them up, and now we want to start focusing on these other organizations that not necessarily tied to education, but can provide educators and students alike access to EduRoam. And Scott McCombs, who's a board member here or a committee member here, has got a great story to tell and a great plan that he's laying out. And Scott, do you want to jump in and talk a little bit about that? I think that's where Rick's getting at, and we'll cover that in some detail, Rick, based on your question.
You bet. I'm happy to talk to this and grateful for UETN's leadership and guidance on this. We have, as a district, we know that 15%, at least 15% of our students don't have adequate internet access. And, Canyons is an affluent school district for the most part. And it's easy, I think it's a common misconception that, that 15% of the district is located in what we would term lower income areas, but that's not true. We've surveyed all of our families, asked them about their internet connectivity, and then we've mapped them. And what we find is that 15% is really scattered all throughout the district, in Draper, in Sandy, along the East Bench, Cottonwood Heights, in Midvale. We do have areas sometimes like in apartment buildings where there's a larger grouping, but it really is the need truly is our neighbors, our family, maybe even ourselves. So one of the challenges that our superintendent gave us really at the start of the pandemic was to figure out a way to work with our community to help extend our network into the community. And so we started to do a number of different pilots. We've distributed over 800 hotspots. We've partnered with Comcast Internet Essentials and have the ability to hook up about 1,200 families through CARES Act funding through that. We're also working with UETN on the CBRS LTE project. We have that on Midvale Middle and working to try to get that extended into the community further. One of the things that we quickly realized is even with all of these different types of access, we still weren't reaching everyone. And so working with UETN, what we've reached out to our community is we've offered to have them partner with Eduroam and become an SP site. Jeff mentioned that. So SP just stands for service provider. So these parties in the community would not be adding accounts. They don't have to manage the accounts. They just have to allow a portion of their bandwidth to be used for Eduroam. And so we've met with all of the cities and the towns in our district. We've actually met with Mayor Mendenhall's office for Salt Lake County. And the excitement around being able to do this is real. Cottonwood Heights has a great story where they talked about having for years wanting to be able to create a guest network so that they could add it to like their city hall and to the parks and places where people congregate. But the issue was anytime they really got around to talking about adding a guest network, security was an issue. They were worried about just having open, unmonitored access. And so when I talked to them about Eduroam, they said that Eduroam would solve a problem that they've been trying to solve for years. So they're very excited about participating with this. Our foundation has created, and they've created these stickers. Hopefully you can see this. So anyone who's willing to participate with us on this will get a sticker and be able to advertise that they are now using Eduroam. And one of the exciting things I think about Eduroam is so many of these issues that we discuss really help low-income families who don't have access. But this Eduroam project helps all students and all staff who are participating with Eduroam. It's seldom that you get to say that this would help all students and all staff. And it's true of higher ed and public ed. So it has a really wide-ranging scope that has the potential to really impact a number of people. And then these cities have also been contacting the district saying, hey, we've got some extra, this was back in November and December, but saying we've got extra CARES Act funding. We don't know how to spend it. Will you help us spend it? And through this Eduroam project, it was easy for me to say, we don't want your money. We want you to build up your network in your community. And then if you'll agree to run Eduroam on it, then we can take advantage of it. And that was an easy sell. So most of the cities that we're working with are using some of the stimulus funding to help beef up their own networks. And then we'll ride on that SP provider and use Eduroam in that aspect. So that's what we're working on. Hopefully that covers what
Yeah, absolutely perfect, Scott.
Perfect.
That's exactly what I wanted you to share. It's something you shared at the TCC meeting a couple weeks ago, and really appreciate your vision and your work that you've put into this. Back to our vision statement, really, we want any location in the state where people congregate, where students can connect, to have EduRoam. So they just walk in, they open up their notebook computer, it connects automatically. That's a secure connection to the internet, and we're off and running. You know, Jim and I just had a great experience where we needed to be to a meeting. It was actually a meeting that Rick Gaithford was leading a few weeks back, but Jim and I were on the road traveling, visiting some sites, working on another project. We were able to stop in Osterson Elementary School in Minersville. Not Minersville, excuse me, Marysville, of all places. Went in, talked to the principal first thing, said, hey, can I connect to your network? And they said, absolutely. We opened the notebook computer, connected, and we were able to present our information for Rick, and then get back to the site visits that we were doing. Just an amazing tool for us to continue to work when we're on the road, those of us that travel the state. So anyway, Scott, great thoughts, great ideas, and it is this idea of ubiquitous wireless access for educators and students alike, and that's higher ed and K-12. We do have a site map if you want to see the locations where UETN is supporting EduRoam. We'll continue to add to that, especially as we start to add some of these non-educational sites. We're talking about we need to continue to add to that, and we will do that. One of the cool things that's happened this year, though, is we've extended the contract for EduRoam, and Jim's worked hard on this, Jim Stewart. And Jim, do you want to talk just a little bit about what the contract looks like and why it's important? What's the benefit? You take a minute to do that.
Sure, certainly. Thank you, Corey. And the benefits of EduRoam are great, but having a 5-year contract really makes it so that we can all feel comfortable about jumping into EduRoam, and all of you know that we'll have that. It's available to us, and that's in K-12, and it doesn't cover higher ed or some others, but at least for K-12, that's the case. And it's really quite important, I think, that we have that continuity and that we know we've got that for the next 5 years. And we're working closely with Internet 2. I think there are some new features and new capabilities that EduRoam will have over those 5 years. I know we're already talking to them about that. We're assisting Arizona and Nebraska in coming up, and there's many states that are very interested in this, but we're right in the middle of helping other states see the benefit of this. And just like any other networking technology and feature, the more that we can bring on, the greater value that this will have. And so, and this is something that our partners at Internet 2, we pioneered this. They do not have multi-year contracts for EduRoam until we put this one in place. But it puts us in a real strong position with Internet 2 to work with them for implementing this in other states, bringing on our service providers here in this state, and bringing new features into EduRoam as time goes on. So thanks,
you,
Corey,
Jim.
and thanks for all the work that you've done, and Jeff and Scott. It's just so amazing to see your vision, and we have many other of our partner districts around the state that are doing some amazing things with EduRoam. We don't have time for that today, but if you'd like to take a look at what we're doing, or talk to Corey or Jeff. Corey is the project manager, Jeff is the program manager, and he's involved in that national level. And I've been able to just step back and let them run with this, and it's fun to see the enthusiasm that's there, and the work that Jeff and Corey are doing in this area.
Thanks, Jim, for all your help on that contract and all your leadership and direction on this. I do have a couple of questions for the AC, as we always do, if we're going to come and present and share. The very first question I have is, how have you, as the AC, the advisory committee, used EduRoam? Anybody want to jump in and share a little bit? Anybody have a good story or an experience? Clint, how are you using EduRoam? I'll call you out. I can do that. I've worked with you long enough. You still with us? Yeah, I can't see who's on, but let's see.
jump on. This is Leslie Baker. I'm from Utah Valley University, the library director. And I have to say it is very nice as we move from place to place for different meetings in the state to have access to EduRoam. And it's just so seamless and so easy. And I could see a real benefit for having that expanded as well.
Thank you, Leslie. Appreciate that. And we do know there's a huge amount of sites in Utah County, and it's really booming. EduRoam is booming in Utah County, so thanks for sharing that. Clint, did you want to jump in? I don't know if you're even hearing us. It looks like you're still in the meeting, but maybe he's not able to listen at this point. Anyway, appreciate you sharing that, Leslie. Anybody else want to share how EduRoam is being used in your organization? Yes, that's Diana.
Corey, you still there?
Yeah.
This is Tony. Good to be with you, Corey. Hey, we've had study abroad over in Florence, Italy. We set up school sites in 5 different schools in Florence, the university, and we were able to use Zoom and Canvas through EduRoam to be able to, yes, conduct our classes there in Florence, but also to be able to stay connected with our learners that were not able to connect with us over there.
Wow, what a perfect example, use case. Thank you, Tony.
Unfortunately, I put on 10 pounds doing it.
It's good to see you, my friend. Tony, I hope all is well. Anybody else want to share?
Or it looked like Dina might have had something.
Okay, is it Dina? And Clint's waving too, so both. Clint, go first, and then Dina, you're up. So.
All right. So I apologize. I had to step away, but I still have so I can hear you calling my name. I wasn't in front of my computer to unmute myself. Just a couple of quick anecdotes. I was at SUU yesterday for our Sterling Scholar competition, and I opened up my laptop, and I was off and going. And you know, we had all the judges and everybody else trying to connect. We're like, oh, we don't know, but we're on. We finally, they were in the process of changing the conference password that day, so we had to figure out the old one and what the new one was. But anyway, we got everybody connected. And then I was fortunate enough to be back in Washington, D.C. about 1.5 years ago. I just kind of looking at my phone sitting in the Natural History Museum and saw that I was on wireless, and I looked at my phone and I was on EduRoam, and I had no idea. And it was just fantastic. So yeah, it's amazing.
Thank you.
It just works.
It just works, and we keep hearing that. So Clint, thank you for sharing that. Dina, do you want to share, please? Maybe not. Am I pronouncing the name right? Is it Dina? Yes, Simmons?
It's Diana.
Diana. Oh, I am so sorry. Did you have something that you wanted to say? Diana? I don't know. I'm not sure. Thank you for your responses, everyone. If you have any direction or thought you want to give to us, if you want to provide some advisory, please let us know. I very much appreciate it. So reach out to me or Jeff anytime.
I'm sitting here watching it player right next to my computer.
I don't know. I think we got, anyway.
I think we're okay, Corey. So let's go ahead
Jeff,
and do
Troy, you're up.
Go to Troy on filtering. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, I've got a screen to share as well. The good thing is I won't be scrolling through much. I just have one slide that kind of details all of the different things. As some of you may be aware, and for those of you that aren't, UETN is responsible for providing licensing for content filtering for most of, for all of K-12 throughout the state of Utah. And our current contract for content filtering, which has been 5 years in the running, ends in June of 2022. So next June, a year from now, essentially. And so as part of that process, we've gone through and begun the RFI, RFP process to figure out what we're going to be doing for content filtering into the future. And we've already got a committee seated of all of the major all of the major organizations that use content filtering throughout the state are represented in that committee. And we're meeting on a weekly basis to address issues and develop criteria and other things. And we're currently in the RFI phase of the project, meaning that we've actually submitted out to our purchasing department an RFI seeking detail and information from all of the different content filtering providers out there. And so we're hopeful to get that information back around the 8th of April. And we'll just be continuing through the different phases of the project with an RFP expected to go out sometime in July or August. And the purpose for that is to just to get that information, or to get that decision made, so that in the event that the content filtering solution that's chosen is different than the one that we currently have in place, that school districts, LEAs, et cetera, have as much time as they possibly can to make plans for any changes that are necessary to make that work. I wanted to bring to the advisory committee just a couple of the most important challenges that we see with content filtering. And if there's some dialogue or discussion that we need to have, we can most certainly do that. But the most important thing we've known this for some time, but that's being reiterated as we go through this process, is that content filtering technology, the actual appliance or technology implementations, are never ever going to be 100% effective at blocking inappropriate content. And this is for a variety of reasons. I'll mention the two most common, but there's many more. Number one would be the encryption of internet communications. Many of you realize or have noticed that everything is now an HTTPS connection, or an encrypted connection between you and whatever website or application that you're using. And encryption and content filtering do not play well together. The only way to filter an encrypted connection is to actually break the whole purpose for the encryption and become like a man in the middle. So you decrypt so you establish an encrypted session to your filter, you scrub it, and then you have to re-encrypt all that data back and forth. So it's very process intensive and really not super effective in implementation. Now, it can be done, but it's difficult, and it's a challenge. The other one is the more challenging issue that we're facing, and that is when inappropriate content exists inside of what we call approved applications. And I want to give you just a couple of real quick examples. For those of you that have Adobe products, we're talking things like Illustrator, Photoshop, Lightroom, etc. Many of you know that there's an Adobe Cloud application out there that allows you to save these images, to have them available in the cloud, to use back and forth. And this is a very typical problem where somebody can upload on an unfiltered computer inappropriate content into that cloud, and then because that cloud is allowed to be used on school systems and services, that content can actually pass right through the filter, because content filtering cannot filter every single image that gets processed across the internet. That's not how filtering technology works. And so what we've seen is that a lot of the inappropriate content, so from time to time you'll hear in the news that some student in some XYZ school district, maybe even within the state of Utah, has accessed inappropriate content on their school device. What you'll often find is that there's some iteration of this issue at play. This issue exists in the Adobe world. It also exists in Amazon. If you go onto Amazon.com and search for something that's inappropriate, there is a reasonable likelihood that an image for a specific product or other thing will be displayed in there. And so it's hard to block just certain pieces or parts of an approved application like that. So hopefully that illustrates the concern and the issue that we've got there. This goes way beyond just those two providers. I've listed just a few others in the slide here. Google Cloud have these same exact problems. YouTube, although there is some content filtering capabilities there, YouTube struggles as well to allow granular control over what videos can or can't be seen. EBSCO is also one that was in the news from a UETN perspective a while back, where somebody was able to actually put some sort of search criteria into EBSCO and pull out content that was deemed inappropriate by the user. And so those are some of the things that filtering and the filtering technology that's available are never going to fully address. Although we're always seeking methods to do content filtering in those areas, it is difficult. So I wanted to make sure everybody understands that there's a gap still, no matter what we're doing. One of the other challenges that we see with content filtering is that with the change in dynamic when COVID hit and the pandemic came through, we went statewide from an on-premise primary content filtering solution to a cloud-based take the device home kind of content filtering solution almost overnight. And what we ended up having to do is we sought CARES Act funds to help fund all of the licensing and requirements that we had to put out cloud-based content filtering for all these devices that were now all of a sudden being taken home by students. And so those significant cost increases are way above our allocated annual content filtering costs that UETN has budgeted right now. And so there are some funding concerns because of substantial cost increases. As a result, one of the things that we will also be doing when Ray and Jim and Jeff and I and others get together this afternoon, we're going to be talking about using ARPA funding to seek additional funding to fund this specific contract renewal. And so we're hopeful that we can acquire funds. But what that does is it creates a sustainability concern. So if we used ARPA funds for the next 4 or 5 years of contract, we want to make sure that UETN's in a position to carry on those content filtering requirements or needs of the customers. And so it has created that concern. And so we're addressing that as we go through and we're evaluating and looking at things. But I would imagine that in the end, that we're going to have to push or request additional fundings from the legislature. The good thing is I think it gives us about 4 to 5 years to acquire and tell that story and make sure that those get funded. And then the last thing that's of any significant concern that I think the advisory committee here would be interested in would be that the deployment methods for each of the individual school districts are changing. The way that Jordan School District rolls out their network and does content filtering differs now, in some cases significantly, from a different school district like Nebo or Cache or wherever. And so it's difficult right now to find a one-size-fits-all content filtering solution. And so that's one of the challenges that we're looking at. And the result of this through a lot of the different discussions is the likelihood is that we'll have a multi-vendor award come out so that we have a couple of different deployment methods that the school districts can choose from that best fit their deployment models and requirements. The other thing that contributes to is increased in costs. Normally, when you're able to throw a large lump of money at a single solution, you get more bang for your buck when you do that. And if we had to split money 50-50 between 2 vendors, we're a little bit concerned as to what how much benefit or value that we're getting out of a solution like that. So some of those are challenges that we have yet to see specifically and quantify as we see RFI and RFP responses, but wanted to make those points discussion point here. I'll pause. That's all the information that I came prepared to present, but I will be happy to answer any specific questions about content filtering or this process that we're in currently, if anybody has them.
Thank you, Troy. Very
I will
good.
jump in. I'm
Thanks,
going
Troy.
to take
Go
over
ahead.
the screen share. Interesting stuff, Troy. Thank you. So we've got a couple of slides to go through. First
Corey,
and
maybe
foremost,
I'll just jump in.
Oh.
Just one comment to
Okay.
Troy. I think,
Okay.
you know, if you look at what, you know, UEN is trying to do, I think you're really trying to hit the perfect balance between what can be done technically, but then making it so that everybody can have take advantage of the state solution. So it's not an easy thing. Never has been. In the 20 plus years that I've, you know, been attending meetings at UEN, this filtering and content on the internet available to students has always been a question. But I think we're trying to strike that right balance. So thank you for all the work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. All righty. So the next agenda item is the Utah statewide technology inventory. This is really to track the digital teaching and learning, hardware, software, the tools that we have out in the schools. It's been a lot of fun to work on. This is our 4th iteration that we'll be doing. We started back in 2015. We did 2015, 2017, 2019, and now we're doing it on 2021. So every other year. So we're starting to collect some longitudinal data. It's kind of fun to look at those trends. We have a great, very strong project team, project leadership team with Jim Stewart being the sponsor. He's provided a lot of direction. Thank you, Jim. Jeff Egley, program director. He's down in the weeds with me quite a bit, working with Connected Nation, trying to figure out the details. And then Lindsay Conrad from Connected Nation. Connected Nation's our partner, and Lindsay's amazing. Connected Nation's been just fantastic to work with, true professionals, and have really brought a lot of experience and help to the project. And then I'm the project manager. Here, wanted just to show you.
Corey,
provide a link.
just
go ahead, Jim.
Before you
Thank
move from that, I'd just also thank Ray Timothy, because it's really his support and freeing up the funding to do this. We really didn't know how we were going to move forward with this, but Ray's made the funding available to keep Connected Nation involved in this. And if you just think back, we concluded the last round of this in February. We reported to the board in February of 2020, and everybody knows what's happened since then. And Rick, I know you used that information at USBE when you were asked about devices that were out in the schools, and it's been a really handy tool and a source of information. And so we're really pleased that we're able to do this again. And I appreciate Ray, and I also appreciate my team for all the work that they're doing to make this happen. Thank you.
Great point, Ray. Thank you for your help, and always enjoy meeting with you and talking with you about this project. So thank you. So I've provided a link in the slides. The slides are linked into the agenda, so you can. Whoa, that's interesting. There it is. It came up. So we have the data, the reports listed in the digital teaching and learning page on the UEN site. If you just go down about halfway or 2/3 the way down, you can come in and look up the data. We do have a complete statewide report. It's fantastic to look at. It's kind of the macro type version, and then we also have individual school or district reports as well. And I just wanted to show real quickly a couple of data points. Obviously, this is going to change between 2019 and 2021, as Jim was talking about. So much has gone on with the CARES. And one of the things that I need to probably point out on this as well is we're kind of behind the ball a little bit, just because we had so much to do on the CARES Act that we put this aside. We usually get started, right as soon as we finish the last inventory, we get started with the next iteration, and really we put this off and starting to work through all the details just this month, actually last month in March. So, but just a couple data points I wanted to share, and you guys can go through this. If you have questions about this, reach out to me anytime. Love to share this data. I do have people constantly contacting saying, how do I get this? Where do I find this? what can you do to help us with this? So reach out anytime on that. I thought this was a great data point to show the growth on the Google Chromebooks from 2017 to 2019, a huge jump. And I think we're going to see a jump as well in the 2021 iteration. A kind of a fun stat to look at there. And then this is the one I think is going to change immensely based on the COVID pandemic. Back in 2019, when we collected this data, it was fall 2019. At 67% of the districts or the schools reporting that the mobile devices were on the cart in the classroom only, and only about 9% of those schools or districts were allowing those devices to go home with the student. I think that will swap. I think that will be something we'll see. It'll be a fun data trend to look at and to track. So anyway, if there's questions on where you get that data, let me know. You do have the link. And let's go back to the presentation. There we are. Okay. We've got Lindsay here from Connected Nation. Asked her to cover this particular slide for us. Lindsay, do you want to jump in?
Absolutely. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, you're coming in loud and clear, Lindsay. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks, Corey and Jim and Ray and Jeff and everyone else. It's great to be here with you guys and have the ability to work on this fourth iteration of the inventory. So Corey asked me to cover this slide on our priorities, and you've likely seen this before. We keep using this slide really to remind ourselves of the pillars or the priorities that have led to the successful implementation and completion of the Utah School Technology Inventory for the past 3 iterations. So undeniably, the most important item here, in my opinion, is relationship management. And that's not just relationship management on our end. It really is the relationships, and it goes in with another item down here, communications, all across the board, from the local education agency, points of contact, all the way up to Corey over at UETN. And so we think that's been a real reason for the success. It's allowed us to get 100% participation in the inventory each time we've done it, which is something I think that when we started this 6 years ago or whenever, it was sort of a pipe dream to have 100% participation. But because of the great folks on the ground there in Utah, we've been able to realize that. Another item is project management. You'll see there Corey and his team over at UETN just have great methodologies that they deploy, and we're able to kind of to sync up with that as well, to keep things clear and concise and well organized. And then, of course, as you all may remember, we developed a custom data collection portal last inventory iteration, and we're going to be able to continue using that one for the future. And
Hey,
I think
Lindsay,
it gives us some longevity. Yeah.
Can I jump in here really quick? So the portal was developed in 2019, but we've turned that over to the development department here at Tech Services at UETN, and they've just done an amazing job of helping us update some of the features that we were looking at and bugs. It's been really fun to work with Kevin and his team over there. So anyway, so that's really what we're doing with the portal this time, and we're going to have that all ready to go by July 1. So
yeah, it's running well, and your team, I just can't say enough great things about your team there. So Corey, really that's it for me on this slide. I'll turn it back over to you.
Appreciate it, Lindsay. Your leadership and your commitment to this is amazing. So here's the schedule. Again, we're kind of behind a little bit. We're starting back in March. We started to really look at this, started to look at some new questions, what we need to do to fix the portal up, make sure it was ready to go. And we're going to be working on all these processes and getting everything ready between now and October 4th, where we launch the portal in October 7th. That's in it coincides with the TCC meeting, I believe, Rick, that we're doing, and we've always done that. We roll it out at the TCC meeting. We'll collect the data between then and December 10th. Obviously, we kind of hope to have all the data collected by by the end of November, but some, a few of those districts, maybe 5 or 10% of the districts or charter schools we continue to work with up into December. And then phase 4 is when we start to compile and do all the reports, and really Connected Nation does a lot of that and provides the reports to the UETN board, and we will definitely bring that information to the AC meeting as well, to your committee. So just a couple of items we want to point out. We're going to use most of the same questions. That's really important to keep that longitudinal data intact. We want to pre-populate the portal, so when the districts and the people that are collecting all this data, there's just a ton of work for them to do. We're going to pre-populate it so they don't actually have to enter data if it hasn't changed. I think a lot of the data will change, and there'll still be some work to be done, but really important part of that is the pre-population data. Again, most of the data will will remain the same. We are planning on adding a data point that we're going to collect on home access. Talk through that, make sure that we have a good question. We're actually working on that question as we speak. And then, of course, we'll use the data portal that was designed in 2019, as we talked about. So that is the slides. That is the presentation. We're excited about the inventory. We're ecstatic that Ray was able to help fund this project, and appreciate Ray in the work that you've done there with Connected Nation. I guess my only question is how are you using this particular the data, these reports that we've done, as AT members? Do you have any experiences or stories that you would like to share?
Corey, this is Ray. I'd like to share a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you, Ray.
I can't tell you how valuable this tool is, or this information is, as I work with legislators. When we did the very first iteration of the inventory report, that was the information that legislators had never seen. We had never gathered anywhere in the state before, and they recognized the investment that they needed to make, and that's what led to the digital teaching and learning funding that came out. They put groups together to build a statewide plan. We were able to do a lot of things, and again, it goes back to having good, solid information upon which to base our decisions. So, and working with Connected Nation has been a real plus for us, because they've done a tremendous job in helping us with this. But we have now, how many versions? 4 iterations of this?
This is the 4th. This will be the 4th, right?
Okay, that's a lot of solid information that we can track where we were and the progress that we're continuing to make. I think one of the biggest criticisms that we used to have prior to doing this inventory was that, was there any accountability for any funding? And there was really no funding that we were receiving for technology. And based upon this solid data, this solid information, legislators turned around and now are our greatest supporters. So thank you, Lindsay, and Corey, thanks for your work on this.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Thanks. Ray, I would echo all of those things that you just said, because it's been invaluable data, not only to get the digital teaching and learning program going, but as a data point to how that program has impacted teaching and learning throughout the state. Coupling that with the other data that we get with the evaluator, we have probably a better picture about what's happening with technology in schools than anywhere in the country, as far as I'm concerned. And I know for a fact that there are very few states that can point to how much technology is actually out there in schools. I've had multiple calls.
Did I lose you, Rick? Does everybody else hear me? Okay, so it's not me, it's Rick. Okay.
I don't know exactly what happened there.
Okay, not a problem. You're back on.
Back on. So, well, it's just that I've had multiple colleagues from around the country and that have, wanted to know how we know so much about what's going on in our schools. They don't have that information. this was again, and you mentioned this a little bit, Corey, that a little over a year ago, when the school closure happened on Friday, in the middle of that weekend, we got a sort of an we had an urgent request. Can we do this? Is it possible that we can actually move learning? Do we have the devices out there? And we could point right back to the inventory at that point because we had just concluded that reporting that we had all of those devices that you just showed just a few minutes ago. Although most of them were in carts, it did not, we were able to take those devices out of carts and repackage them and get them out to students. Now, that doesn't mean that we didn't buy additional technology and devices and that, because that occurred as well. But I think, it's as we look back on this pandemic and we have to do as people will, how did we do? Where were the things that we could have done better? We're going to be well positioned to be able to not only say at the beginning of the pandemic, just a few months prior, this is what we had, but then we're also going to be able to, I think, clearly show what happened during the pandemic when all of this funding came into the system. How did that impact the technology in the schools and that? Because we're going to do that inventory this fall, which will be just post post pandemic. So just before to right after. How unique, it will be interesting to see how that data plays out as we move forward in that. But I think it's going to give us a really clear picture. I think it might be of value, just as a comment and a suggestion, to reach out to Sarah Young as we're putting together the inventory questions. There may be some data that because she's been overseeing all of the CARES Act funding, and that there may be some data points that she might think that we could collect in this inventory right around COVID, that would, the COVID pandemic, that would be very, useful to help tell the story that occurred. Yeah.
Which is really cool, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, darn it. I actually have an action item to meet with you and Sarah on that discussion, have that discussion. So,
well, you're always ahead of me, Corey.
Well, no, not necessarily. No, I think that was brought up by Jim or somebody. And we'll be reaching out and hopefully meeting with you guys in the next week or so.
Way, it's a good idea, and we're going to take care of it. So thanks,
yeah,
Rick.
Absolutely.
That's all I have.
Corey, I can echo what Rick said about UETN doing this better than any other state. We work with a lot of states, and just the data that you guys have your hands on is really amazing. And so I think it says a lot to the leadership there.
Cool. Thank you, Lindsay. Rick, you'd mentioned something that's really important, and I don't know, we need to maybe think through this just a little bit, but one of the biggest issues we're going to have with all this money being dumped into the states, all this technology that we're implementing, how we're going to sustain that. And we kind of hope that this report will help us give us some trends and some ideas on what's out there and how we're going to be able to replace this 5 years from now. You've hit that pretty hard, and know that that's a concern and an issue, and hopefully we'll be able to collect that data that will be meaningful to help us address that.
Mm-hmm. No, and I would agree. It's one of my concerns that I have going forward, is this bubble that is going to be created, and hopefully we will have the data to be able to show that, so we can talk to policymakers over the next couple of years to say, we've got this, we're going to need some additional replacement funds, or increase some funding short, long term, to be able to smooth that out so that it's not quite that big. All of a sudden we've got this huge amount that we've got to replace all at the same time.
Thank you. Any other questions or input or insight on how you're using the data?
I just wanted to pipe up, and as a reminder, we have only about 6 minutes left in the meeting time, and we have a few more agenda items. So I would suggest that if you have comments, you send them directly to Corey. I want to thank all of you for that presentation on the project. It was a great update. Great work.
We appreciate being invited to this, and we'll turn time back over to you. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, our next update is committee reports, and I'm first on the list, and just wanted to let you know we haven't met as UTTC The only thing I'm aware of are 2 RFPs. One that I believe was completed for Anoto. There's several schools in the state that are going to be implementing Anoto, and another is a mental wellness app or mental wellness product, which I can't remember the name of. I was looking to see if Laura was here. She's not. We won't meet again in UTTC until sometime in May, so I won't have a full committee update until then. But Clint, do you have a brief update on C-Forum? Are you still
You're
on?
muted. Thank you. Rookie mistake. Not much to update as far as the C-Forum group goes from our last meeting, but since we did last meet, we did have a very successful USET conference. Had almost 1,000 people get in and register and participate in our online platform. Had over, I think, close to 150 different sessions. Since we were online this year, we had the advantage of recording every session. And so those folks who have registered for the conference can go back and rewatch any of those sessions through the Schedule platform that we used for scheduling and things like that. So, and now I am now the de facto president of USET. And so it's my job to make the conference go and be better next March. So be looking for updates and so forth with that. But any questions for me or trainers or C-Forum or USET or any reflections on the conference?
I don't hear anything. Thanks, Clint. That sounds great. Good luck with your new title.
Thanks.
All right, Scott, I know you spoke a little bit about TCC earlier. Do you have something that you want to add?
I'll just be really brief. We did have our spring meeting, March 18th. It was well attended. The kind of the focus was, are we there yet? You know, kind of that idea of kids sitting in the car and saying, are we there yet? IT directors getting together and saying, are we there yet, right? And I think the general consensus is we are not there yet, but we are certainly moving forward, and that's what we need to be doing. So we'll meet again this fall, and we'll keep on moving forward.
All right, awesome. Thank you for that. Next up, we have just a couple of videos that were posted. It just said T-Council member, so I'm not sure who wants to bring this up. Kelly, is that you? Maybe not. Anyway, it looks like there's a couple linked there, one on the Eduroam and Nearpods. I know we had a great presentation our last meeting.
I think those are just mostly informational, so I think they're just there for the council to be able to look at. And Eduroam, obviously, we've had a great presentation on that. So if you want to see it in video production in 3 minutes or whatever, whatever the length is, that's great. But I think it's just and then the Nearpod is, obviously a UEN resource that is now provided to all of the K-12 schools.
That's correct.
I know they're doing like I don't know if it's weekly or it's at least monthly kind of Nearpod tips that they push out to teachers. Yeah, so it's an ongoing series.
Right.
All right. We have 2 minutes. Anyone have a comment for the roundtable?
I just wanted to say something really quick on that Eduroam link, that video. It's a very short video. It has a couple of use cases. It has Superintendent Dalton, who's a board member, talking about Eduroam, as well as a tech person in the district sharing, and we'll continue to build those stories.
All right, that's great. All right, well, our next advisory council meeting is scheduled for June 4th, 8:30. If you're in other meetings between now and then, we'll see you then. If not, thank you so much for meeting today. Appreciate everyone's support and for your participation. Great meeting today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
And
Hey.
thank you, Shelley, for taking the lead.
Thanks for having me.